For a nation obsessed with growth, with a stock market that soars and a tech sector that dazzles the world, there is a hidden, insidious tax that silently drains the wealth of 4 billion people. It is not levied by the government, but by the very currency they use every single day, the Indian rupee. You are told that a weaker rupee is good for exports, a sign of a competitive economy. You are told that India is on the path to becoming a global superpower, but look closer. Look at the relentless, decades-long slide of the rupee against the dollar. This isn't a sign of strength. It's a symptom of a deep structural flaw, a financial black hole that is actively, systematically and relentlessly keeping a billion people poor. This is the story of India's rupee trap. It's a trap built on a foundation of political expediency, economic dogma, and a fundamental misunderstanding of what true currency strength means for a developing nation. And it's a trap that ensures that for every step forward India takes, the vast majority of its citizens are dragged 2 steps back. Imagine a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much water you pour in, no matter how hard you work, how much you save, or how much the economy grows, the water level never truly rises. That hole is the perpetually weakening rupee, and the water is the hard-earned wealth of the Indian people. The numbers are stark. In 1947, the rupee was pegged at parity with the US dollar. Today, it trades at over 83 rupees to a single dollar. This is not just a historical curiosity. It is a 98% devaluation over 77 years. But the real damage isn't just in the exchange rate, it's in the psychological and economic chains it places on the common man. Every time the rupee weakens, it's a hidden transfer of wealth from the poor and the middle class to the global elite, and those with dollar-denominated assets. It's a massive, silent inflation bomb. India imports nearly 85% of its oil. When the rupee falls, the cost of that oil, the fuel for every truck, every factory, every generator, skyrockets. This isn't just about petrol prices. It's about the cost of food, the cost of transport, the cost of manufacturing. It's about the cost of living for 4 billion people. The trap is self-reinforcing. A weak rupee fuels inflation. Inflation forces the Reserve Bank of India to raise interest rates. High interest rates stifle domestic investment, making it harder for small businesses to grow and create jobs. And without robust job creation, the vast young population remains stuck in low-wage cycles, unable to build the savings necessary to escape poverty. The very mechanism designed to stabilize the economy, the RBI's intervention, often ends up tightening the noose on the common man. The narrative of good for exports is a half-truth that masks a devastating reality. Yes, exporters benefit, but they represent a tiny fraction of the economy. The vast majority of Indians are net consumers of imported goods, whether it's oil, electronics, or even basic raw materials for local production. For them, a weak rupee is a direct measurable reduction in their purchasing power. It is the reason why a middle-class family's dream of buying a home or sending a child abroad for education becomes a financial nightmare overnight. This is not a story about complex financial derivatives. This is a story about survival. It's about the farmer who pays more for fertilizer, the student who pays more for imported textbooks, and the pensioner whose life savings are quietly being dissolved by the corrosive acid of currency depreciation. The rupee trap is a political choice, disguised as an economic inevitability. It is the choice to prioritize short-term trade balances over the long-term financial health and stability of the entire population. And until India confronts this trap head-on, until it decides that a stable, strong currency is the foundation of true national wealth, the dream of a prosperous India will remain just that, a dream perpetually out of reach for 4 billion people. Part 2. The mechanics of the trap and the RBI's dilemma. The rupee trap is not a natural disaster. It is a meticulously constructed system, maintained by a complex interplay of global finance and domestic policy. At the heart of this system is the Reserve Bank of India, tasked with the impossible job of balancing stability, growth and inflation. The RBI operates a managed float system. This means the rupee is not allowed to float freely based purely on market forces. Instead, The RBI constantly intervenes, buying and selling US dollars to prevent excessive volatility. While this sounds prudent, the bias of this intervention is almost always towards preventing the rupee from strengthening too much. Why? Because a sudden, sharp appreciation of the rupee would instantly hurt the powerful export lobby and the vast IT services sector, which are crucial sources of foreign exchange and political support. This bias creates a one-way bet for speculators and foreign investors. They know that if the rupee weakens, the RBI will eventually step in to slow the slide. But if the rupee strengthens, the RBI is likely to intervene to cap the gain. The result is a long-term predictable depreciation trend. This predictability is the poison in the trap. Consider the cycle of CAC's foreign institutional investment. When global interest rates are low, FIIs pour billions of dollars into Indian equities and debt, temporarily strengthening the rupee. The RBI, fearing the impact on exports, often buys these dollars, injecting rupees into the system, which fuels domestic inflation. This is the classic, impossible trinity problem. A country cannot simultaneously have a fixed exchange rate, free capital movement, and an independent monetary policy. India sacrifices the exchange rate stability for capital mobility and monetary independence, but the cost is borne by the common citizen through inflation. When global conditions change, say the US Federal Reserve raises interest rates, FIIs pull their money out, selling rupees and buying dollars. This massive capital outflow causes the rupee to plummet. The RBI is then forced to sell its dollar reserves to defend the currency, often burning through billions in a futile attempt to stem the tide. This depletion of reserves is a direct cost to the nation's financial security. The structural trade deficit is the engine of the trap. India is a massive net importer, primarily of crude oil and gold. These two commodities alone create a constant, insatiable demand for US dollars. Every time the price of oil rises globally, India needs more dollars to pay for the same amount of energy. Since the rupee is constantly weakening, the cost of oil in rupee terms rises even faster, creating a vicious feedback loop of imported inflation. This is the mechanism by which global commodity prices are directly translated into a reduction of the Indian citizen's purchasing power. The political economy of the weak rupee is perhaps the most cynical aspect. The government benefits from a weak rupee in several ways. 1. Remittances. The millions of Indians working abroad send home billions of dollars. A weaker rupee means their families receive more rupees for the same dollar amount, creating a powerful, politically engaged constituency that benefits from the depreciation. Export competitiveness. While the benefit is often overstated, the perception that a weak rupee makes Indian goods competitive on the global stage is a powerful narrative for the ruling class. 3. Debt management. A weak rupee can make it easier for the government to service its domestic debt in real terms, as inflation erodes the value of the debt over time. This systemic preference for a depreciating currency is a silent, ongoing wealth transfer. It is a transfer from the vast, unorganized sector, from the millions of small savers, and from the salaried class to the handful of large exporters, the remittance recipients, and the government itself. It is a policy that sacrifices the financial well-being of the many for the political and economic convenience of the few. The ultimate tragedy is that the pursuit of a competitive currency has made the Indian economy less competitive in the long run. It discourages domestic manufacturing that relies on imported components. It makes technology transfer more expensive, and it prevents the rupee from ever achieving true international stature. The rupee remains a hostage to the dollar, and 4 billion people remain hostages to the rupee. Part 3. The social cost and the way out. The consequences of the rupee trap are not abstract economic theories. They are lived realities for 4 billion people. The most immediate and devastating effect is on poverty and inequality. The World Bank estimates that a significant portion of India's population lives near or below the poverty line. For these individuals, every percentage point of inflation, driven by the weak rupee, is a direct threat to their survival. Their meager savings, often held in cash or low-interest accounts, are constantly being devalued. The cost of basic necessities, food, fuel, medicine, rises relentlessly, forcing families to make impossible choices. Should they buy food or pay for their child's education? The rupee trap is not just an economic problem, it is a humanitarian crisis who are in slow motion. Furthermore, the trap exacerbates inequality. Those with access to foreign currency, those who work for multinational corporations, or those who have invested in dollar-denominated assets, are shielded and often benefit from the rupee's decline. Meanwhile, the vast majority of the population, whose income is purely in rupees, sees their relative wealth shrink year after year. This creates a two-tiered economy where the rich get richer simply by holding the right currency, and the poor get poorer by being forced to hold the wrong one. The trap also stifles innovation and entrepreneurship. Starting a business in India often requires importing machinery, software, or specialized components. A weak rupee makes this initial investment prohibitively expensive, creating a high barrier to entry for local entrepreneurs. This dependence on costly imports prevents the development of a robust, self-sufficient domestic manufacturing base, forcing India to remain a consumer of foreign technology rather than a producer. The psychological toll is immense. The constant struggle against inflation breeds a deep-seated financial pessimism. Why save when your savings are guaranteed to lose value? Why invest when the returns are constantly being eroded by currency depreciation? This pessimism translates into a lack of long-term planning and a focus on immediate consumption, which further hinders capital formation and national development. The way out. Breaking the rupee trap requires a fundamental shift in economic philosophy, a willingness to prioritize the long-term stability of the common citizen over the short-term gains of the export lobby. 1. Prioritize currency strength and stability. The RBI must explicitly shift its mandate to prioritize a strong, stable rupee. This means allowing the rupee to appreciate when capital inflows are strong, rather than intervening to cap the gains. A strong rupee signals confidence, reduces imported inflation, and increases the purchasing power of every Indian. 2. Aggressive import. Substitution. India must double down on domestic production, especially in critical sectors like energy and electronics. Investing massively in renewable energy sources and domestic chip manufacturing would reduce the insatiable demand for dollar-denominated oil and technology imports, structurally reducing the trade deficit. 3. Deepening the domestic bond market. Making the Indian government bond market more attractive to long-term foreign investors without the fear of sudden capital flight can provide a stable source of foreign exchange. This requires greater transparency and a commitment to fiscal prudence. 4. Fiscal discipline. The government must reduce its fiscal deficit. Excessive government borrowing often leads to the printing of more money, which is inherently inflationary and puts downward pressure on the currency. The choice is clear. India can continue down the path of a perpetually depreciating currency, where the dream of prosperity remains a mirage for 4 billion people, or it can choose a new path. A path where the rupee is a symbol of national strength, not a tool of silent taxation. A path where the hard work of its citizens is rewarded with real, lasting wealth, not the illusion of growth that is constantly being eroded by the rupee trap. The time for half measures is over. The time to free 4 billion people from the shackles of the rupee trap is now.